Commissioner Follansbee, whenever you're ready.
Okay, it's 1 o'clock. So I want to call the November 2nd, 2022 regular meeting of the Governance Committee to order.
You, Chair Follansbee, call to order at 1:02 p.m. And roll call. Agenda item number 2, and I'll be bringing up a screen for our agenda today. So roll call. We have Committee Chair Commissioner Follansbee,
Present.
Commissioner Scott,
Present.
and Commissioner Zavansky.
Present.
With that, we have quorum.
Thank you very much. We can have agenda item number 3.
Agenda item number 3, initiate public employee evaluation of Executive Director for 2022. This is an action item and will be presented by Chair Follansbee.
As everyone's aware, annually we are asked to evaluate the position of the Health Service System Executive Director. There were 2 documents sent out. One is the timeline for the evaluation, and the second is a draft of the relevant items to be covered in the evaluation. And this is an action item. So I'd like to open this up for discussion. I think the first item is the agenda. And this is this is a timeline as the first item in front of you. One can see that because we tried to coordinate this timeline, which is has a few more steps with the timeline for the board self-evaluation, which is agenda item number 4. So that's why there's some sort of long pauses in the process. So we can have one governance committee meeting to review both findings and then present them to the board at the March regular meeting of the Health Service System. So any questions about the timeline? Okay, I think what I'm going to do is ask that we have one motion to approve both the timeline and the draft evaluation. So if we could have the next slide, and then once we, move and second that, we can open up a public discussion. So if I could have the next slide.
Chair Follansbee, the next slide would actually be the next agenda item.
Oh, so we don't have a slide of the draft of the performance evaluation for the director?
No, we've posted just in this agenda the timelines.
Oh, okay. So anyway,
Need
so
a
you're gonna have to go by
motion?
your. Well,
Excuse me.
you've had a chance to review the agenda item, the second performance evaluation document, which we don't have posted in front. The only question I'm going to throw out to the committee members is that there's, there are 5 categories. There's not a category of not applicable. So if a commissioner sort of feels that there's a section or part that that they can't really comment on regarding performance, should they be answering the question in one of the 5 values? I think that we chose the items that all commissioners have some responsibility in each of these issues. So I'm not advocating for it, but I am just throwing it out there as an option, and I'll entertain any discussion on this or any other items that people may have.
Mr. Chairman, this is
Yes.
Randy Scott. There are a couple of reasons why I think that, given the fact that we have no new commissioners this year, everybody has at least been through the process once. I mean, for both self-evaluation and executive director evaluation. I say no new members. I would exclude the supervisor because I don't know that she was with us when we did the full cycle, and we don't know who the next supervisor representative is going to be. But that notwithstanding, the fact that we have the executive director's self-evaluation preceding as a component to review and to look at, along with the fact that all of the appointed and elected commissioners have been the cycle. I don't think we would need to add that this year, but I think that as we go forward, if indeed we have new appointees or new electees, depending upon when they come aboard, that is something to be considered. And we should make a note at this meeting that we would take that into account. But for this upcoming cycle, I would recommend not.
Thank you.
If I may, I recall that discussion was more centered around the Health Service Board self-evaluation rather than the executive director. And so we may revisit that at that time. And then the other point of order that I just wanted to notice the board is that Supervisor Chan technically resigned from this committee in May. We just received a copy of that resignation letter yesterday. So she would not be participating in either of these evaluations.
She resigned in May.
Correct.
Yeah.
We were told that she was going to resign. We never received this letter until yesterday when Holly was trying to schedule a regular check-in. And
Oh, I
a
see.
staff member different than the one we normally work with offered that response, and it kind of took us by surprise because I didn't realize that she had officially resigned. And that position will not be reappointed until the elections are over or a president is named and they assign committee assignments. So I would anticipate January at the earliest.
Yes. All right. Well, that would further reinforce what I was describing, Mr. Chair, that we should probably not have any changes in the form for this year. But again, as we think about, I have another suggestion as well about the form, but on this point, the not applicable, I would say that we shouldn't change it for this year.
Okay. Commissioner Savansky, do you have any comments on this? Or any other issues about that attachment?
No, I actually concur with Commissioner Scott. And I also noted that Supervisor Chan has not attended since we had heard she was going to resign. And I sort of took it as the fact that her resignation was imminent back then. But no, I think Commissioner Scott has made the appropriate argument with regard to the not applicable. So I concur with that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would just add that I really feel that we just, worked on this evaluation, not with the idea that any commissioner would opt out of this form, because every commissioner has a responsibility for each of those items. I think, I realize that the conversation really refers to the next agenda item, but I wanted to give equal time just in case. I didn't want to, make that decision on my own. So I certainly agree. So at this point, I'll entertain a motion to approve both the timeline and the current evaluation for the executive director for 2022, 2023.
I'll make the motion that we accept. Actually, I think we have to call the next item, which we haven't called. So I'll make the motion for the timeline to be accepted or approved at this point.
I would like a motion to both the timeline and the performance evaluation of the executive director. Since
Okay,
we
and-
discussed that.
Okay, and also to approve the the evaluation for the executive director for both.
I second the motion for the timeline and the format for the performance evaluation for the executive director.
Okay, thank you very much. It's been moved and seconded, so I'll now open this up for any public discussion.
Thank you, Chair Follansby. Our public comment instructions will be viewed on the screen, and I'll be reading them aloud. Our moderator will be ready to take any public comments in the queue. So each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes to comment in length unless the committee chair deems new public comment time limits during the meeting. All public comments are to be made concerning the agenda item that has been presented. A caller may ask questions of the policy body, but there's no obligation to answer or engage in dialogue with the caller. When I welcome you on the call, you're encouraged to state your name clearly, although you may remain anonymous. I'll give you an audible warning when you have 30 seconds remaining. And when your 3 minutes have ended, I'll thank you for your call. You'll be placed back on mute, and the moderator will unmute the next caller. Opportunities to speak during the public comment period are available by dialing the number on the screen. The dial-in number is 415-655-0001. Again, 415-655-0001. When prompted, use access code 2492-458-5366. Again, 2492-458-5366. Then press pound and pound again. You will enter the meeting as an attendee on the public comment call line and dial *3 to be added to the public comment queue. When the system message says your line has been unmuted, this is your time to speak. For those already on hold, please continue to wait until the system indicates you have been unmuted. Our moderator will now notify us of any callers in the public comment queue at this time.
Commission Secretary, do you notice that your access code printed on the screen is different than the one you read out? 2492 and 5366 are correct, but the middle 3 numbers are different. And I just wondered if you were aware of that.
Thank you so much. Let's just pause for a second and I'll check sure that all of our notifications are accurate. I'll also be checking online, making sure.
It's interesting because the bolded, subtitle
Oh,
and number one differ. One's 2492, and the next one's 2491. So that they actually don't correspond. And so I wasn't actually listening that carefully. I'm not sure which one you read. Did you read the 2491?
I appreciate all of the notifications, the correct one,
Either.
and there is a misprint on what everyone is seeing visually. I will read out again. It is correct on our agenda, the top number, and on our website. So that number again to dial in is the 2492-458-5366. Again, 2492-458-5366. I will promptly edit this screen and going forward so that all people viewing will not be confused. So I can do that while our moderator updates us on our call-in queue.
Board Secretary, we have 2 callers on the phone line. 0 callers have specifically entered the public comment queue at this time. A reminder to all callers on the line, you must dial *3 now if you want to join public comment for this specific agenda item. We will wait 5 more seconds and then close public comment for this agenda item. Board Secretary, there are still no callers in the public comment queue at this time.
Thank you, moderator. Hearing no further callers, public comment is now closed. And
Thank you very much. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the timeline for the evaluation of the Health Service System Executive Director and the list of the performance evaluation survey. All of those, we'll have a roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Commissioner Follansby. Roll call vote, starting with our chair, Commissioner Follansby.
Agree, yes.
Commissioner
Aye.
Scott
Aye.
and Commissioner Zavansky.
Yes, aye.
Okay, passed unanimously. Thank you very much. And again, thank you very much, Commissioner Savansky, for noticing the discrepancy in the access code. That's really important. If we can now move to agenda item number 4.
Thank you, Chair Founsby. I'll be uploading our pages one more time momentarily. That should be coming through. I'll make sure that it goes to full screen. And it looks like we can see our agenda item number 4, which is to initiate the annual board self-evaluation. This is an action item and will be presented by Chair Founsby.
Thank you very much. So it was circulated with both a timeline for the board self-evaluation and a draft of the self-evaluation form. Again, the timeline was meant to sort of coincide with the timeline for the executive director that we just passed for agenda item number 3. And again, I was raised the question, I think one of the items think that through some of us in the past is that we're asked to evaluate the orientation for each of the orientation each year. And unless a commissioner goes back and reviews the updated orientation packet, so I think they're being asked to evaluate something that they may not have experienced. And so this was the issue that sort of raised, to my mind, question about whether we should have a non-applicable category so that we're not making up answers. So I'll open it up for further discussion or comment. Commissioner Savansky, did you have any further comments on either the timeline or the form?
I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I was speaking and I saw that I was on mute.
Okay, yeah, we couldn't see you, so we didn't know you were speaking.
Yes. So, excuse me, I would concur that in the case of the orientation or question, that would be a place that we need to have non-applicable or, on the form so the person could check that and we would know that that's the case. All of the other dimensions of what are there, even if it has been limited by a commissioner's service, let's say that they would be brought in and at this time of the year versus having seen the whole benefit cycle or what have you, I think they would have some impression of how the board is operating, how we're interacting with management, how we're communicating, so some of those dynamics are going to be evident even if they've only attended 1 or 2 meetings. So I think that all of the other things would be applicable. And then I would like to offer a very specific change on one of the questions, but we'll get to that in a moment.
So you can bring that up now. I mean, I think you might as well bring
Okay.
up because we can discuss all these. It's not so complicated, I think. So if you have another change.
And I know we don't have the full evaluation yet on a slide, but it's question number 16. And it says that the board routinely adheres to policy, its policies or something to that effect. And I don't know about anyone else, but I think that we should always be adhering to our policies unless it's, unless we are clear and have consulted with our counsel that we can deviate in some way. So I would like to have the word routinely deleted from that particular question. It would read that the board adheres to its policies would be a more declarative statement. rather than routinely.
Commissioner Savansky, any thoughts of either these two issues or any other issues?
No, I was just trying to figure out whether routinely was implying that it's a regular thing, but if you just say the board adheres to, that's pretty much the same thing. I'll support that. Yeah. Go along with that.
And again, I think that I like it because it does, the idea of routine means, well, how do you define routine? It's like 2% of the time we don't adhere, but that's still routine, or 3% or whatever. So I think that's a
Yeah.
good point, actually. I agree with both of you.
Yeah, because we either do or we don't.
Yes.
And we
And,
do.
and there have been times where we have varied from what the terms of governance or some pre-existing guidance has been, but we've done that publicly, number one, and it's been with the advice of counsel.
Right.
And we've taken a vote on it, as a board. We either,
Right.
yes, we're going to make this exception, and it's exception to our policies. We understand, and we deliberate over it, and it's noticed, and all the rest of that. So I would think that in this case that a more declarative statement would be the appropriate place to go. But I wanted on the record that whenever that would occur, that we would consult with counsel and that it would be some board vote and discussion publicly during the course of our meeting.
Very good points. Because I think at that point, the policy may change or there is some reason for it. And we've had the discussion and the vote and the advice
Yes.
that we seek to do that. And we've done it, as you point out, publicly. So yes.
That's the question I have is, do our rules of governance actually address this issue? That when occasions arise that we need to deviate from these rules of governance, this is the process. I don't recall, since, the whole document isn't up for review this year. We did it last year, I think, and we say 1 to 3 years. So I don't recall whether that's actually a section that is in there to address this. If it's not, if it is, then great. If not, do we need to consider maybe for the next meeting, we're not going to do wordsmith this now, but this issue, just to sort of be in compliance with what you discussed, Commissioner President Scott.
Well, I would say that I would say that we need to take a look at that to determine whether, because I can't recall off the top of my head or not, and that we'd also consult with our counsel as to whether we would need to describe that in more detail in terms of reference. I think most of the bodies here in the city and public or non-public bodies, that if indeed you're doing something outside your policy, you're going to normally bring that before the decision-making authority, and i.e. in this case, it's this board. And I do recall at one meeting several years ago, our former counsel said, well, the board can make that decision today if it wants. It has the authority to do that. So I think that if we want to be more descriptive about it in the terms of governance, this would be the time to begin working that up as an amendment even now for this. But we should consult with our counsel, I think, to clarify that point.
I guess the question is, am I hearing that, yes, we all agree that this should be looked into, but it's on a to-do list? We don't need to
Yes,
vote on this issue, but we'll vote on the
right,
issue in
not
front of
today.
us. Okay,
right.
okay,
That's correct. Mhm.
okay, thank you. So unless there's any other discussion, I'll entertain a motion to approve the timeline as presented and the performance evaluation as modified with the two modifications as suggested. If someone wants to make that motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we accept the timeline as presented and that we also accept the self-evaluation with an amended question 16 that would delete the word routinely.
Second.
And well, can we add a not applicable to the question? I don't remember the question number about the orientation.
Yes, and that we add not applicable to the question regarding board orientation.
Second.
Here, a second
on
for
that
that.
as well. Yeah. Yes, second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we accept the timeline as presented and the performance evaluation with two modifications. One, that there be a non-applicable to the question regarding the board orientation packet for new members. And the second being to delete the word, was it usually? Or
No, routinely.
Routinely from
Routinely.
question 16. Okay, so with that, we'll open this up for public discussion.
Thank you, Chair Follansby. Our public comment instructions will be displayed on the screen and I'll be reading them aloud. Each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes to comment in length for public comment unless the committee chair deems new public comment time limits during the meeting. All public comments are to be made concerning the agenda item that has been presented. A caller may ask questions of the policy body, but there is no obligation to answer or engage in dialogue with the caller. When I welcome you on the call, you're encouraged to state your name clearly, although you may remain anonymous. I will give you an audible warning when you have 30 seconds remaining. And when your 3 minutes have ended, I'll thank you for your call. You'll be placed back on mute and the moderator will unmute the next caller. Opportunities to speak during the public comment period are available by dialing the number on the screen. The dial-in number is 415-655-0001. Again, 415-655-0001. When prompted, use access code 2492-458-5366. Again, 2492-458-5366. Then press pound and pound again. You'll enter the meeting as an attendee on the public comment call line and dial *3 to be added to the public comment queue. When the system message says your line has been unmuted, this is your time to speak. For those already on hold, please continue to wait until the system indicates you have been unmuted. Our moderator will now notify us of any callers in the public comment queue at this time.
Board Secretary, we have 2 callers on the phone line. 0 callers have specifically entered the public comment queue at this time. A reminder to all callers on the line, you must dial *3 now if you want to join public comment for this specific agenda item. We will wait 5 more seconds and then close public comment for this agenda item. Board Secretary, there are still no callers in the public comment queue at this time.
Thank you, moderator. Hearing no further callers, public comment is now closed.
Thank you very much. So I would like to call for a roll call vote on this item.
Thank you, Chair Follansby. Roll call vote, starting with our committee chair, Commissioner Follansby,
Aye.
Commissioner Scott,
Aye.
and Commissioner Zavansky.
Aye.
It passes unanimously. Thank you very much. If we can go to agenda item number 5.
Agenda item number 5, initiate Health Service Board annual education planning process. This is an action item and will be presented by Chair Follansby.
Okay, so every year we review the education review process. I think that what was circulated was a very brief timeline, which basically, puts it on the agenda today, and then review any changes at a tentative meeting for the Governance Committee scheduled for February 16th, within a final presentation for board review and approval on March 6th. We were not given any draft or any comments of the process to review. And so that has to be sort of, I guess, thought of by each commissioner. I'll open it up for discussion.
Commissioner Follansby, I think that part of the explanation for the timeline as presented to us is that the strategic plan cycle is going to be defined and approved and reviewed by the board within the current calendar year or by the current calendar year. And it's normally based upon, in the last cycle, we looked at the strategic plan to say, okay, based on what our goals are and what the topics of emphasis are and where we say we're going to go programmatically and operationally, then we as a board might need to know something about this topic, that topic, so on and so on. So I think it's quite correct to see this timeline today and understand that once the strategic plan is reviewed and approved by the board, that we would derive education topics for not only ourselves as a board, but for the general public around certain areas of emphasis in the strategic plan. And that's what we did in the last cycle. And so this would, I think, this timeline would comport with that.
Absolutely. Yes, I agree.
Commissioner Scott and Commissioner Follansby, could we also indicate, you indicated that it was for board education and public education, but I think we need to indicate that staff education is also vital and that we include the term staff so that if staff needs the education, wants the education, wants to access it, that it's available to all members of our staff. And I don't know if Abby has any comment with regard to that, but it's my perspective that it would be appropriate to include staff. And so I'd like to hear from Abby unless there's other separate conditions or availability for that.
Yeah, Commissioner Savansky, I'd like to respond to that because I mean, I think that the mandate for us is to review our own education as a board. We actually don't have a mandate to review all the education of the public or a mandate to review all the education of the staff. Clearly, that'll be part of, the change in strategic goals, but I'm not sure that that is actually covered. That opens up two new areas that the board really hasn't been evolved in and is not our mandate to look at. So I appreciate the thought, and I think we should hear what these plans are, but I'm not sure that we as a board should be putting that into our own processes. This is for the board and the board members and our own responsibility.
Well, Commissioner Follansby, I would just reflect on a couple of years ago, we did have an education forum, and it was directed toward the board, but we took a very, very in-depth look at pharmacy, not only drug prices, but an expanded look about how and what the role of the pharmacy benefit manager was, so forth and so on. It was directed toward the board. It was a board session, but we called it an education forum. And it was specifically to kind of bring us all up to speed as to what was broadly going on. And we invited, participation in that particular forum from our various members and constituencies that outside of our regular meeting to come and to listen to that. So it was a deliberate effort to, quote, educate the board and the public about what this particular issue was. Now, I recognize that could be said about any of our meetings and so forth and so on, but there might, and there have been in the past, a couple of issues that were broad enough that we wanted not only the board to understand them, but to communicate to our general public, our constituency, our members, if you will, about how that was influencing and impacting us as a system.
I agree, but I think nothing about our board self-education review and policies, makes those efforts impossible. And those are, time by time, situation by situation, as you point out. And all of our meetings and education meetings are open to, participation from staff and the public. So I don't think any of that is eliminated. It's just, I'm not sure it's our responsibility to monitor, for example, what the health service system is doing on an ongoing basis on educating about pharmaceutical prices and all that. I mean, or educating the staff about how they answer the questions that come up, in calls or queries to the health service system. So I agree with you. But on the other hand, I'm not sure that that is really, needs to be dictated by our policy. But again, if you think that we do, then we need to modify our policy to, to encourage that to happen. But I don't think that's really necessary, frankly.
I think Director Yant has a comment.
Thank you. Yes, I just should go back to my tenure here with this board, is that when we developed the strategic plan in 2018, we developed an educational plan that complemented it, and we updated it as the years went by. We elected to not do a full board meeting dedicated to education in November, as had been done prior to my time here, partly because we had so many topics to cover, and we split it up and just recognized that there's many ways of learning. We all learn differently, and so we did different styles of education. We most recently did a full board education in preparation for the strategic plan development, and that was a special meeting held off-site. And so we've been very focused on that. We do internally, all of us, certainly on the management team and on the expanded leadership team that we have recently developed, have opportunity and take advantage of our very of the speakers and topics that come to us through the Catalyst for Payment Reform membership that we enjoy, and the Pacific Business Group on Health that also has tons of education. And, I know some of you have, taken advantage of that as well. And that's one of the primary forms of education that our staff takes. There's, personal staff development, there's education and certification courses that staff do, et cetera, et cetera. So I would, for this purpose, to allow us to be hyper-focused on the board's educational needs, Leticia and I were just discussing this morning, as we get the plan approved and really look at implementation, that we will, because of some turnover on our team, need to do some level setting and resetting and be sure that we're all of the same understanding of some of these major topics that we have before us. So I consider it our leadership team's responsibility to be sure that our staff is continuing to educate themselves personally and professionally to in order to have the peak performance that I think we really enjoy in our leadership team. But it doesn't come naturally. They really have to seek out these opportunities. But what we look for is, and one of the things that we, Leticia and I agreed to this morning, was really set aside some time that we'll think about how we develop the educational plan that complements the strategic plan, and maybe other topics of the day that sometimes we can anticipate, many times we can't. But that's been the style and the sort of pace that we've done the last couple of years.
So I can assume that when you refer to the staff, that you're also referring a parallel education plan for the public, for members and all that regarding all of this as well. Is that part of your management team agenda?
Yes, I mean, most of our interface with the public is around their enrollment opportunities and helping them understand their benefits and use their benefits. The major exception being well-being and emotional well-being and mental health, where we've ventured into a whole new sort of area over this last couple of years. So we've really stepped up the game. I know you guys heard the communications plan presentation by our communications director a few months ago, and I think can see the evolution where we've gone from selecting your benefits to encouraging people to appropriately use their benefits. And that's been the primary direction with our membership, is to help them use their benefits.
Thank you. So are there further comments to be made or questions or suggestions at this point? So I guess I'm going to ask both Commissioners Savensky and Scott, do you want to make a proposal or amendment to the timeline in terms of the education of staff and public, as I think you were both alluding to, or can we stick to the agenda item, which is the timeline as presented?
I'm basically suggesting that we stick to the timeline, but I'm saying that in our education as a board, there is a derivative effect of educating the broader public around and our members around the topics that we're discussing. And that's really my point. It's not that we need to do anything with the timeline or that we have to amend our terms of reference or any of that. But as we are, as a board, becoming clearer about and through whatever technique or method that we're talking about, it has a public consequence to it. And I think we need to kind of keep that in the back of our mind that yes, some of this, the more technical aspects of what we may be dealing with in the benefits realm, we've done it last year and we did it the year before, but there may be some particular area where we're getting ready to decide a policy that quote some education of our membership or and ourselves is needed. So it's not a matter of this is I'm not suggesting that it has to be amended. This particular timeline has to be amended in any way, but I think that we need to keep that in the back of our mind as we are looking at aspects of the plan.
Okay. Very good. So with that, if there's no further discussion, I'll entertain a motion to accept the timeline for the board education review plan as presented in the agenda.
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion that we accept the timeline as presented for March, Wednesday, November 2nd, which is today, then Thursday, February 16th, 2023 as a tentative date, subject to change as necessary, and that it would finalize on Thursday, March 9th at our regular Health Service Board meeting.
I second the motion.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we accept the Health Service Board Education Plan, anticipating a draft for a timeline, then anticipating a draft to the Board Education Plan in February. So with that, I'll open it up to public discussion, public comment.
Thank you, Chair Follansbee. Our instructions for public comment will be viewed on the screen and I'll be reading them aloud. So each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes to comment in length unless the committee chair deems new public comment time limits during the meeting. All public comments are to be made concerning the agenda item that has been presented. A caller may ask questions of the policy body, but there's no obligation to answer or engage in dialogue with the caller. When I welcome you on the call, you're encouraged to state your name clearly, although you may remain anonymous. I'll give you an audible warning when you have 30 seconds remaining, and when your 3 minutes have ended, I'll thank you for your call. You'll be placed back on mute, and the moderator will unmute the next caller. Opportunities to speak during the public comment time period are available by dialing the number on the screen. The dial-in number is 415-655-0001. Again, 415-655-0001. When prompted, use access code 2492-458-5366. Again, 2492-458-5366. Then press pound and pound again. You'll enter the meeting as an attendee on the public comment call line and dial *3 to be added to the public comment queue. When the system message says your line has been unmuted, this is your time to speak. For those already on hold, please continue to wait until the system indicates you have been unmuted. Our moderator will notify us of any callers in the public comment queue at this time.
Board Secretary WebEx froze momentarily. Please confirm that you can hear me and there's still connectivity.
Thank you, moderator. You're coming in loud and clear.
Thank you. We have 2 callers on the phone line. 0 callers have specifically entered the public comment queue at this time. A reminder to all callers on the line. You must dial *3 now if you want to join public comment for this specific agenda item. We will wait 5 more seconds and then close public comment for this agenda item. Board Secretary, there are still no callers in the public comment queue at this time.
Thank you, moderator. Hearing no further callers, public comment is now closed.
Okay, with that, we'd like to call for a roll call vote on this action item.
Thank you, Chair Follansby. Roll call vote, starting with Chair Follansby,
Aye.
Commissioner Scott, Commissioner Scott, you may be on mute.
I'm sorry, aye.
Thank you. And Commissioner Zavansky.
Aye.
Thank you. So it was unanimously passed for the Health Service Board Education timeline as presented in the agenda. And with that, we'll go to agenda item number 6.
Thank you, Chair Follansby. Agenda item number 6, initiate governance policies in terms of reference 2022 review process and timeline. This is an action item and will be presented by Chair Follansby.
Okay, thank you very much. So as we're all aware, our rules of governance basically mandate that we review the terms of reference at least every 3 years. In the agenda are the dates in which we reviewed them word by word, line by line. The last one being under the leadership of Governance Committee Chair Scott at the time, and that was in February 10th, 2022. So what we're asked to do is approve a timeline for more minor changes, updating dates that need to be updated annually to cover the calendar year, than any other clarifications in terms of language or whatever. We don't have a draft of those at this time. And you can see from the timeline that our rules of terms of reference mandate that these changes be circulated not 7 days before, but 10 days before the board meeting. So we could not review it today and have it come on to the agenda for our regular board meeting next week. That would have been 8 days and not to 10 days. And so you can see the timeline as proposed, which basically would be that we are all being asked to submit these changes. Staff's being asked to submit these changes. These will be collated into one draft and circulated and then presented into on the set out as an agenda item on Monday, November 28th, 2022, to give us the 10-day window before the regular Health Service Board meeting on Thursday, December 8th. We will not have a governance committee meeting to discuss these presumably minor changes beforehand. So just to make sure that this is all clear to everyone. This does not replace the comprehensive review that will be due in about 2 more years. So with that, I'll open it up for comments or discussion.
Chair Follansby, I would just like to amend your introduction. I also chaired the 2019 review of the terms of governance as well. It was a double. In fact, I thought that I might be able to escape the most recent review because of that, but it wasn't to be. So my point, the only thing is that we've identified one possible area that might be part of a draft, and that is how do we deal with policy exceptions? That's one topic. I'm aware that also we had another topic that came up as we were taking a look at self-insurance for, I forget which of the, either our reserve fund or policies or something else. And we said we needed to, and I'll rely on the executive director to correct my reference here. But we said we would need to probably look at the terms of governance says that we will do this, purchase self-insurance, and we might need to amend that because it's now included in our number of our carrier policy provisions. So those two areas might be part of what we're kind of updating, but I would defer to Director Yant on the second one, if you would.
Yes, that discussion did come up on, we wanted to take a look at the terms of reference as it related to stop loss and self-insurance.
Stop loss, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and there is an opportunity to clarify in the terms of reference the process that we have gone through and will continue to go through on an annual basis that allows us to recommend that we not purchase stop loss insurance. And so our CFO, Iftikhar Hussain, has worked with Mike Clark on some language that we would recommend be amended in the terms of reference reflecting that practice. And so that is one area. And then another area that has surfaced is around the board's responsibility when it comes to the audits and compliance activities that this department does quite robustly in a variety of areas, not just finance. And so we're taking a look at and developing some suggested language again to amend the terms of reference in the appropriate spot. I'm not sure exactly where it goes at this moment, but those are two other areas that we thought the board would benefit from those amendments.
If I'm correct, I'm sorry, but my understanding is also that then presentations on each of these items will be made, probably not on our next board meeting in November, but in December, anticipating the vote on these proposed changes, so that there's an educational component to both of these issues that will be presented in December, on Thursday, December 8th, I believe. Is that correct?
That's my understanding as to the process. Holly's kind of
Yeah.
worked through all the legal issues so that if this committee calls for staff to make those recommendations for the December meeting, then the full board can accept those or not at that time.
Right.
So we're basically suggesting, just to be clear, there might be three different areas. One would be policy. I'm going to characterize these as policy exceptions,
Yes.
stop loss,
Yes.
and audit and compliance.
Yes.
Those would be the three potential areas that we could be looking at for modifications or changes in the terms of reference.
Correct.
And so I guess that and I think that is absolutely correct the way I understand it as well. And just be clear that then we as a governance committee have sort of handed over the responsibility for the discussion on the board level and not a preliminary discussion and recommendation to the board on these three items, because we won't be meeting before that. So just be clear, so everyone's clear on the process.
Right. And what has happened in the past, if indeed there are substantive questions, et cetera, the board can defer its approval to the following meeting. And I think we've had that happen once, if I recall correctly, because there was some aspect of a particular terms of reference policy that we discussed, but there wasn't a level of consensus, if you will, around this particular issue. So the board said, we will carry this over to the next meeting, clarify the language a little bit more and so forth. So that option is still there. What this proposal and timeline says, that we'll we'll begin that discussion on the 8th and in the December meeting. And if everybody's questions are answered and there's no further need for clarification or whatever, we'd be in a position to approve them as presented.
Absolutely, yes. Good. Commissioner Svansky, any comments on this or any other issues around the timeline?
Oh, I totally concur with Commissioner Scott on these recommendations on these 3 areas, and also with our director. Yes,
Great.
it's
So
tight. I think it's tight, but I think it will work out.
But also I think that President Scott actually appropriately says that we are under no pressure to approve them at the December 8th meeting if there are issues that come up in the setting of the preparation that were provided for each of these 3 items, that we can have a robust discussion at the December 8th meeting and then defer any final vote or discussion for another month or 2, or however long it takes to resolve those. So I think that we're not shortchanging the board, our members, or the health service system in this regard.
No, and I think it's up to us, the 3 of us, to be as well educated or clear about whatever the changes and recommendations are, so that we can assist our fellow board members when it comes to making any decision in December. But as you point out, if we need to defer for additional time to review that, we at least have that option, which is actually very good to understand. But I think it is up to us to do the best we can, and to be the most informed as to why we're doing whatever changes we make or recommendations.
So can we maybe modify the timeline to include that in the line where the board's secretary compiles submitted changes into one draft, that we ask that draft be sent to each of the governance committee members for sort of review and understanding and get questions addressed at that point as individuals? Can we do that?
Is that what November 16th is all about? Send draft changes to the governance committee?
Those are the changes, but then there's the compilation into one draft occurs after all of the comments have been collated on November 23rd.
Yeah, that's when Holly isn't going to get Thanksgiving. She'll be working on
Well, hopefully there'll be.
compiling. No, I'm just giving a little joke, but then we'll have one draft at that point. Yeah.
I think giving you an advanced copy and allowing you to give HS staff feedback, I believe would be allowable. What is not allowable is for me to tell you what the other said.
Right.
Because that would be convening a meeting, I think.
Right. It had to be one-on-one conversations, not 1-on-3 or 1-on-2. Or
meetings are
right. And I can't tell each of you what the other said, and you can't speak to each other about what you're doing.
Right. No, meetings
but it could give me a temperature read as to if we have like thinking that we can move forward, and if we don't, I may actually pull it from the board agenda prior to the meeting, rather than. It just depends. It just depends. But I just wanted to caution that we, have to follow the public meeting rules here very carefully.
I want to make sure that Jennifer Donnellan is still listening to this and concurs with the process as been suggested and reinforced by Executive Director Yand. Jennifer, are you still on the line? She's muted.
This is the Health Service Board Secretary. I can unmute Jennifer and we can see about hearing her. So Jennifer.
Yeah, make sure she's, yeah.
Jennifer, you're unmuted.
I am still here, and I was able to hear what you said, but at the same time, my computer was going down, so I was a bit distracted. Can you sum up briefly what the plan is?
I think the plan as outlined in the timeline in the agenda suggests that final comments for modifications to the terms of reference be submitted by November 23rd and collated, compiled into one draft. And that single draft would be sent to the public as part of the agenda on December 8th, early, Monday, November 28th, to comply with the 10-day mandated window for review publicly. The comment was made by Commissioner Zavansky that each board member has a responsibility to understand the changes so that in the discussion on December 8th, we can assist a robust discussion on the three major possible agenda changes to the terms of reference that have been outlined, with the idea that that we might be able to vote on the three changes or defer one or more of the changes to another meeting. So it's a matter of whether we as board members of the governance committee members could see the compiled draft before November 28th, or whether we would just need to see it November 28th along with everyone else, which would be perfectly acceptable, of course.
Unfortunately, I need to look into this since I haven't dealt with this before. I'm trying to think of the best way to review and get back to you.
Yeah, we just don't want to violate any sunshine rules about conversations amongst, board members that should be public and are not. Essentially the 28-day, the November 28th deadline when these would be submitted gives each one of the governance committee members 10 days, like it does everyone else, to review and understand their questions. So we just can't converse with each other about these outside of, a scheduled meeting because of sunshine rules. So that's really the issue. It's probably not critical, but it would be of note. So if you could look into that, then maybe we can not modify the timeline as outlined, but at least take that into consideration.
Okay, I will do so.
I just want to leave on the table, because it may be that we've created a convoluted process that is something difficult to explain, let alone administer. What we might back up and do is just, especially since there's no time pressure to complete this task, is take it up at the next governance meeting. I don't know what that, so we would just defer, to keep it in that process so that we can get through the public discussion in a usual manner.
Okay, so are you suggesting that that one of the governance committee members modify this timeline to have the summary of the one draft submitted to a tentative governance committee meeting, I think on February 16th, for then presentation in March? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll open this back up for discussion from other governance committee members. Commissioner Savansky, you're on mute as well.
I realize that. I'm trying to think. This would put us into February. Am I correct?
Right.
Right.
And I'm wondering why, my question would be, why would it need to be February? If anything, we might want to move it to approval and review in January. You see, that it would be at the January board meeting. So what it would allow us to do is to review this compiled draft or discuss it maybe as a committee at our December 2nd meeting.
I mean,
Review
don't
the
we have,
draft
So
on
we don't tentatively, what, I'm confused now. We don't tentatively have a governance committee meeting in December 2nd. So,
Oh, I thought I
can't
saw
we
that.
call one? Can't we call
now
one
I'm
whenever,
confused.
but can't we call one whenever we feel
Yeah,
we
we
need to?
can.
Or
No,
we-
if we want to
Yeah.
schedule another governance committee meeting, we can. But then if we meet on December 2nd, that doesn't allow us to present. I have to look and see what the date of the December.
No, I'm not suggesting that we be prepared to present that the board would receive it in December. It would be a summary of changes presented to the board in January is what I'm
Right.
suggesting. And I thought that in a prior timeline that there was a governance committee meeting in December, or is that just the deadline for us to submit our?
Those are deadlines. I think our
Okay.
next
All right.
tentative meeting was February. So
Okay.
that would be, probably a briefer meeting, but that would be, we can call that at any point, as you point out. So,
But it would put it ahead of deferring this into February and so
Right.
on.
right.
So I'm just suggesting that that would be the amended thing, that the policy posting date would coincide with the January
Okay.
board meeting rather than the December board meeting.
I
So,
think we also have to be aware of that 10-day posting requirement. So
Yes.
however we move these dates around, that we may have to work a little bit backwards with regard to the dates to
yeah,
make
but that's
sure
easy
that
because
10 days.
we're proposing January, so that would be sometime late December probably. So, so that would be doable. So, so I guess am I hearing before I ask for an amended item on the calendar for the governance policies in terms of reference. Am I hearing sort of a consensus that that's what we would like is to have the compiled drafts submitted as part of an agenda for a governance committee meeting sometime in December, not necessarily
Right.
December 2nd, but sometime in December to be determined.
Right. That's what I'm suggesting.
Okay. Claire, is that,
Okay,
okay.
sounds reasonable. Okay.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to approve the timeline with modifications. And in that, the board secretary will be compiling changes into one draft and submitting it to a governance committee meeting to be scheduled sometime in early December of 2022 for review and comment, with then the final draft to be presented 10 days prior to the January Health Service Board meeting for review and action at that point.
Mr. Chairman, I would move what you have described in terms of the edited timeline.
Do I hear a second?
Second,
Okay.
yes.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept the governance policy in terms of reference 2020 review process timeline with the following modifications: that the board secretary will compile into a single draft the potential policy changes covering 3 and possibly other areas as outlined in our discussion, to be then circulated at another governance committee meeting to be scheduled in December and posted for discussion and finalization subsequent posting of the final draft 10 days before the January regular Health Service Board meeting 2023. Okay, so with that, I'll open it up for public discussion.
Thank you, Chair Follansby. Our public comment instructions will be posted visually, and I'll be reading them aloud. Each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes to comment in length unless the committee chair deems new public comment time limits during the meeting. All public comments are to be made concerning the agenda item that has been presented. A caller may ask questions of the policy body, but there's no obligation to answer or engage in dialogue with the caller. When I welcome you on the call, you're encouraged to state your name clearly, although you may remain anonymous. I'll give you an audible warning when you have 30 seconds remaining, and when your 3 minutes have ended, I'll thank you for your call. You'll be placed back on mute, and the moderator will unmute the next caller. Opportunities to speak during the public comment period are available by dialing the number on the screen. The dial-in number is 415-655-0001. Again, 415-655-0001. When prompted, use access code 2492-458-5366. Again, 2492-458-5366. Then press pound and pound again. You will enter the meeting as an attendee on the public comment call line and dial *3 to be added to the public comment queue. When the system message says your line has been unmuted, this is your time to speak. For those already on hold, please continue to wait until the system indicates you have been unmuted. Our moderator will now notify us of any callers in the public comment queue at this time.
Board Secretary, we have 2 callers on the phone line. 0 callers have specifically entered the public comment queue at this time. A reminder to all callers on the line. You must dial *3 now if you want to join public comment for this specific agenda item. We will wait 5 more seconds and then close public comment for this agenda item. Board Secretary, there are still no callers in the public comment queue at this time.
Thank you, moderator. Hearing no further callers, public comment is now closed.
Thank you very much. So now we'll call for a vote on the amended timeline for changes to the governance policies in terms of reference for the Health Service System Board of San Francisco.
Thank you. Roll call vote, starting with Chair Follansby,
Aye.
Commissioner Scott,
Aye.
and Commissioner Zemansky.
Aye.
Thank you very much. It passes unanimously. So with that, I think we've covered all the agenda items. I would like to thank everyone for participating today for robust discussions on all of these items and clarification as necessary. And as usual, I'd like to thank Letitia Harris, our moderator, for her attentiveness as well during this entire meeting. And with that, the meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you. Agenda item number 7, adjournment at 2:15 p.m.
Thank you, everyone. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Holly, for all of your work on this.
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Holly, as well.
Thank you, commissioners.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you.
Enjoy your
Holly.
Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Now, where are you going? Okay. Now what? Now what?